Hello everyone, this is Gautam from Shailaja IS. This video will be discussing on our Prime Minister Modi's visit to Malaysia, which happened on February 8th, 2026. This was your first official foreign visit by our Prime Minister to any other country in the year 2026. Before we look into the key outcomes of the meeting, it was not any landmark shift was not there. But through this, we'll try and understand in brief about India and Malaysia relationships. So before we jump into the actual outcomes of the visit itself, we'll first try and understand the significance of Malaysia for India. And in the end, we'll also try and understand what are the key irritants in the bilateral relationship, right? So, and before we go into the details, you should be very well aware about where Malaysia is situated in your Southeast Asia. It's a part of your ASEAN network, right? It is sitting at a very crucial juncture of your Strait of Malacca. This is your Strait of Malacca, which strait is nothing but a narrow stretch of water which connects two larger oceans or water bodies. So it is connecting your Indian Ocean region and your Pacific Ocean. So this is a very important trade route. Nearly 40% of the entire world's trade passes through this particular strait. So obviously it becomes a very important choke point or very important trade route for any other country to have a control on it, right? And that is why Malaysia is and Indonesia becomes very important in the Southeast Asian region. Right, as you all know, in the Southeast Asia, we have Myanmar, Laos, which is a landlocked country. We have Thailand, we have Cambodia, Vietnam, right? And here we are having Malaysia, the tip of one of the islands we are having, Singapore, and it is surrounded by your Indonesia and South China Sea, right? So this basic geography and mapping part of it, you should be aware about it. Right, now we'll try and understand what is the, you can say, importance of Malaysia for our country, right? The very first importance, as I already told you, is about the trade aspect of it, or the geostrategically importance of the Malaysia itself, right? It is sitting at the crux of your Strait of Malacca, where 40% of the global trade passes. So having a friendly relationship with this country as well as Indonesia is useful in ensuring smooth supply of trade, because obviously when there is an important trade route that is passing, you need to be friendly with the neighboring countries. Otherwise, these countries can become powerful in order to restrict the flow of trade itself. And that's one of the important reasons why ASEAN is leaning towards USA, because USA knew about the importance of these trade routes. Wherever there is good resources, wherever there is important trade routes, wherever there is big, huge markets, US always wants to have or exert its control directly or indirectly, right? So during the formation of ASEAN as a regional organization itself, it was having an inclination towards this US. USA also has its military bases in the Indian Ocean region so that it oversees or monitors and ensures the security of its trade routes. So more or less, US supports ASEAN, and in return it wants to have some sort of a control on the trade route itself, right? Now China, since it is a rising power, China now wants to control this trade route, and slowly it is trying to expand its influence in the South China Sea, and eventually it wants to control this trade route, right? But I think there is a reform or reorientation in the global trade routes that is happening because of your climate change, where your Arctic sea route, that is your northern sea route, is getting, you can say, economically feasible because of the melting of ice cover, right? So earlier, the Arctic Circle region, it was not used for any transportation purpose, because for nearly more than half of the year, it used to be frozen. Now, because of climate change, the ice is melting, and it has become now possible for the ships to traverse through this Arctic region. Right, so there is a reorientation of global trade though which is happening. Anyway, that is a separate topic in itself. For us, what we have to understand or come back to the topic is that it is having a geostrategic importance because of its proximity to the Strait of Malacca, which is an important trade route where nearly 40% of the world trade passes through this particular trade route, right? Second, since India wants to have a preeminence in the Indian Ocean region, so India doesn't want to be the dominant player as such, but it wants to be the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. And therefore, in order to realize this vision, it needs to have a friendly relationship with your Malaysia, or the relationship with Malaysia becomes an important part of it. Another important aspect is your India's Look East policy, which was upgraded in 2014 to Act East policy, whereby India wants to develop its connectivity, infrastructure and trade with your Southeast Asian countries, and as a result it wants to use that trade or connectivity to boost its own economic growth and to emerge as a preeminent player in the Indian subcontinent region. So in that context also Malaysia becomes important. So from a geopolitical perspective, your Malaysia becomes an important partner in your Act East policy. Having a friendly relationship with Malaysia helps you with regard to ensuring that your supply or trade route is in a safe manner or in a secure manner, right? Another importance is your defense and security purposes with regard to sharing of intelligence on your anti-terrorism intelligence, right? Also, both the countries are using Sukhoi fighter jets, which is actually from your Russia. So both of them have this Sukhoi connection. So there is, you can say, joint exercises that has been conducted by the militaries of both the nations. You are having joint army exercise, you are having joint navy exercise, and also your joint air force exercises. So from a military and defense partnership perspective also, Malaysia plays a important role in the Indian Ocean region, right? Also, from a trade perspective, currently the trade between India and Malaysia stands at $20 billion. Compare that with USA, which is at around $140 billion. Compare that with China, which is upwards of $135 billion. And moreover, the surplus is favoring your Malaysia. So in a sense, you can say India is in the trade deficit with Malaysia, primarily because of import of palm oil. India is one of the largest buyers of palm oil in the world, and Malaysia is one of the largest producers of palm oil in the world. So that is tilting the balance in favor of your Malaysia, right? So economic and trade aspect becomes one important aspect, and moreover, both the countries are trying to move away from the dollar in order to engage with trade amongst themselves. So India is also trying to move away from dollar, which the term is called as de-dollarization. The same efforts has been put by Malaysia also. So in this context, they are at the forefront of establishing the trading in the local currencies itself, right? So not much progress has been made because the volume of trade is also not in a significant manner. But nevertheless, there is a good enough chance that if one of the countries in the ASEAN becomes or agrees for conducting the trade in the local currencies itself, the other countries in the region can follow suit, right? So that is one of the importance of your Malaysia. Finally is your culture or people to people ties. See, Malaysia itself, around 70% of the people are you can say indigenous people. Around 22 to 25% of them are from China origin, and around 7% of the people, that is numbering around 30 lakh people, are from your Indian origin, and primarily majority of them are coming from your Tamil Nadu region or having their roots in Tamil Nadu, right? So there is a shared people to people ties, there is shared civilizational culture part of it, and they are also one of the important political and social lobbying group in Malaysia itself, right? So when you look at from any bilateral relationship, try to always view it from different dimensions or different lens. One is your geopolitical and geostrategic importance. Is it trying to support India's rise in the region? Is it trying to support India's interest with regard to taking on China or taking on US part of it? Second is your defense partnership. Are they aligned? Is there a buyer and seller relationship? Are they willing to export certain military goods or import certain military goods? Right. Next comes your economic and business ties. How is the trade relationship? Is it on a increased projectory track, or is the trade deficit in favor of India or not? Right? Is the trade balance in favor of India or not? And finally, there is your culture angle. Right? So, what are the civilizational linkages? What role that diaspora is trying to play over there? For example, India's diaspora in US is around 3%, but those 3% are the top sections of US society. Right? So, any bilateral relationship, you try to view it from these angles: geostrategic, defense and security, economic and business part of it, or the trade aspect of it, or the trade routes aspect of it, and finally your culture and people to people ties. Right. Now with this background, we'll try and, in fact, in 2023, the partnership was elevated to your strategic partnership. Right. And it has been 50 years since the relationship has been established. Right. So 2 years since it was elevated to your strategic partnership. Right. Now, what are the key outcomes of the summit? We'll again try and look from this particular lens itself. From a geopolitical perspective or a geostrategic perspective, India said that it is going to push for a full membership of Malaysia in your BRICS platform. Right now, it is a partner country. So, India says that it will try to push or support the full-time membership candidature of your Malaysia in your BRICS platform. Likewise, Malaysia also supported India's claim of permanent seat in UN Security Council. Both of them agreed to strengthen the cooperation in intelligence sharing with regard to counterterrorism measures. And both of them also said that whatever the trade agreements that they are having, they are going to review it in a quicker manner so that a new framework, a new agreement comes out, which further fuels the growth of trade amongst them. Right. So these are all any basic outcomes that you can expect in any other visit. Right. One of the important key outcome was an agreement between your NPCIL, National Payment Corporation of India Limited, and your PayNet of Malaysia. Now the agreement is going to ensure that whatever is the financial transactions that is happening between both the countries is going to get more smoother. So sending money from one country to another country always involves regulatory checks and balances and is not going to happen in an instant manner. It takes 1 or 2 days time depending upon the agreements between both the countries. So now since NPCI, that is National Payment Corporation of India, is that organization which has rolled out you can say transformatory technologies like your UPI, Unit Payment Interface, based on which you are having apps like your Phone Pay and Google Pay, and it is also trying to internationalize this UPI so that other countries are also in a position to use this fintech future. So in the coming days, we can see a more smoother transactions between you can say Malaysia and India. Right. Another important key outcome of this summit was an agreement in order to establish a semiconductor hub. Okay, Malaysia accounts for nearly 13% of the global semiconductor testing and packaging. The production of semiconductor chips is concentrated in your South Korea and Taiwan and Japan to a certain extent. But the testing part of it and the packaging part of it, Malaysia is playing a predominant role. And India wants to position itself as the next source of semiconductor chip manufacturing. And it has taken certain initiatives or measures in order to push this particular industry, that is semiconductor manufacturing industry, because the world is trying to move away from the dominant players like Taiwan and South Korea and trying to establish an alternative semiconductor industries in other countries like Vietnam and India. So India is positioning itself as this particular potential alternative. And since it is trying to establish its manufacturing base, Malaysia is good with regard to testing and packaging. So if there is an active collaboration, since the functions are complementary to each other, it is going to further benefit India in your semiconductor industry. So some sort of an agreement has been signed. So it shows the vision in which both the countries are trying to move forward, right? So these two are, if you can say, one of the most important outcomes of this particular meeting. When it comes to your cultural people-to-people ties, Tiruvalluvar Center is now established in your Malaysian university. The idea is that this center is going to promote the shared Tamil culture or the shared Indian culture amongst Malaysian nationals, right? So it is somewhat a celebration of a legendary poet known for his work called as Tirukkural, believed to have existed between 3rd century BC and 6th century AD, has written nearly 1300 to 1400 couplets that talks about your governance, that talks about ethics, that talks about love. One of the most revered political saint in Tamil Nadu and in south of India, obviously national figure, right? And this particular whatever you are seeing is a statue that is located in Kanyakumari, Tiruvalluvar statue. Using the Tamil diaspora as the base, the union government is trying to appease to that particular segment as well, right? So a Tiruvalluvar center has now been established. They're also promoting Tiruvalluvar scholarships for your Malaysian nationals who want to further take up their studies and come and study in India, right? And more importantly, another key outcome under this heading is a new consulate is now being established at your Sabah province of Malaysia. Now you need to know that a new consulate means an increased Indian presence. So increased ability of Indian authorities to oversee what is happening in the region. Since China is now trying to up its game, China is trying to increase its presence in the region. Having a consulate in that particular region is going to benefit India from a strategic perspective, right? So these are all some of the outcomes of the visit, right? Geopolitical visit, economic, where you have an agreement on semiconductors and your payments. And from a culture and people-to-people ties, we are having Tiruvalluvar centers and a consulate that is being opened. Now, we'll try and understand what are the challenges or the irritants that is present in the relationship between India and Malaysia. The first and foremost is your Zakir Naik factor. Zakir Naik is a radical Islamist whose speeches venture into, you can say, fundamentalism. And he is wanted in India for money laundering cases, for your hate speech cases, but he is currently residing permanently in your Malaysia. So that has always been a cause of concern or an irritant in the relationship, and Malaysia is not willing to easily return that particular person to India, right? Another important factor is your China factor. See, 22% of the Malaysian demography comes from your China, or is having Chinese origins. So as a result, since China is also economic powerhouse in the region, the political governments over there tend to balance between India and China, right? For example, in 2019, the then Prime Minister Mohammed Mathair was leaning more and more towards your China, but the present day Prime Minister Ibrahim is a pragmatic person. He knows how to balance or is considerate towards India's interest and not to antagonize India. So the China factor is always going to be there, and Malaysia is an integral part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative is a massive infrastructure connectivity project that has been envisaged by China in order to revive its Silk Road project. So through that grand vision, China wants to expand its infrastructure footprint and economic presence across different parts of the world, primarily your Asia and Europe. Since Malaysia is an integral part of it, there is always concerns that it may not be aligned with India's interest in the region, right? So that always is going to be a cause of concern. Even in other neighboring countries like India, like Sri Lanka or Bangladesh, there's always a concern that, or even Nepal, for example, that China can play a more dominant role in our neighboring countries, which is not in the interest of India, right? Because your own backyard needs to be under your own control. If you talk from a realist perspective, that is what you expect. At least your backyard or your ground needs to be under your own control, right? Especially for a country which aspires to become a global power, right? Now, another important concern is your political sensitivity on the Kashmir. Because in 2019, India abrogated Article 370, and that was criticized by the then Malaysian Prime Minister in United Nations. So unofficially, India went for a boycott and it stopped importing palm oil from Malaysia. And time and again, such uncalled for comments on Kashmir has been given by political leaders of Malaysia, primarily to deal with their own domestic Muslim vote bank. So in this context, such type of irritants, it continues to plague the relationship between India and Malaysia. Okay. Then we have the trade deficit part of it. For example, the $20 billion trade is leaning or in favor of your Malaysia, right? And sometimes Malaysia is trying to resist in certain areas where India is strong with. For example, India is strong with IT services, India is strong with pharmaceuticals, India is strong with your automobile sector, and it is not allowing all these sectors, Indian sectors, to enter into the Malaysian market in an easy manner. So there is some sort of a protection that has been built into the economic relationship, where India is trying to push for all these sectors so that the trade balance tilts in favor of India, but it is resisted by your Malaysia, right? And finally, we have the palm oil geopolitics, in the sense Malaysia is one of the largest player. India is heavily dependent on your palm oil. And it can certainly weaponize, okay, this particular aspect. And that is what is going to happen. Like if we are dependent on others for certain essential commodities, then obviously they can leverage it, especially in your challenging situations or crisis situations. So that is what happened after 2019-20 onwards. So from then onwards, India said that we should not be overtly dependent on other countries. We are having our good agroclimatic conditions which are favorable for cultivation of palm oil, and it started a dedicated mission, national mission for promotion of palm oil, and it chose your Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Northeast India for promotion of this palm cultivation, right? So that is one of the concerns or the key irritants in the relationship. So I think you've got a brief idea about India-Malaysia relationship. You can also attempt this question. Despite deep historical and cultural ties, the India-Malaysia relationship is often described as performing below potential. Now you tell me what are the irritants that is plaguing the relationship, and you suggest measures to insulate the bilateral ties from domestic political sensitivities. Right. So you can attempt this question and you can send it to me. Right. Here is my WhatsApp number or a Telegram number, and this is my email ID. So looking forward to your responses.